Mr. Lattimore, before you go on, I want to talk about blood and blood types. The reason why they took a blood test is, for example, if you have, let's see, what is it called when sickle cell anemia? If you have sickle cell anemia, then it's important for you to know who you're marrying, because if you marry somebody else with sickle cell anemia or with the trait, your child can come out with sickle cell anemia. And so you have to, and it's like that with other diseases. And there are some diseases that's specific to Judaic people, specific to people classified as Black or autochthonous people, specific to Asians. And so it's very, very important, if you care about, or if it matters to you how the child can come out, to make sure that whomever you procreate with, their blood type is compatible with yours. Nowadays, people don't seem to care, but I think at some point we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly we did. And that was another way of perverting the people, is by taking away the concept of marriage, right? People don't value marriage anymore. So even what you're referring to, why would you look into the blood type of the person that you're laying down with having children if you're not even considering being with them long term? So now things have been reversed, right?
Okay.
Turned upside down, turned on its head. The things of old that were normal and what we call tradition are now have been outcasts, right? People don't want to practice the old ways, right? That was for our grandparents, our great grandparents. Why would we do that? We're in the modern age. We have everything we want and everything that we need, right? And do what thou wilt, right? Not understanding where that term comes from, or that saying comes from. So the ways of these evil entities is to cause confusion, to take away the information, the knowledge, so that, again, it's easy to control people when they're ignorant.
Right.
So now we have a lot of ignorant people who are unknowledgeable. And if you don't know what's going on, then you will accept what the people in power tell you.
There's a scripture, I'm trying to find it, that talks about the old path. I can't remember what it says exactly. Okay, I'm looking at Jeremiah 6:16, says, stand by the roads and look and ask for the ancient path where the good way is, and walk in it and find rest for your souls. But they said, the people said, we will not walk in it.
You know, it's funny. Grandma often used to say that she knows that we are the Hebrews, that we are the Israelites, because we act just like them, right? The things that we say is ironic. It's the same things that was said in the scriptures when the prophets came and said, hey, we're doing things totally improperly. They said, no, we don't want to hear that. Many of the prophets got killed, right? It's unpopular. It's actually always been unpopular to give the information and to enlighten the people and to give the truth, because for some odd reason, people have not, for the history of time, people have not wanted to hear the truth. People would rather be stuck in their ways, right? And the problem is, it's hard to break a habit.
Yes.
So, and this is the reason why they wanted our children in schools early.
Okay.
Right? Because now the family doesn't even spend time with the children anymore. Out of the womb, you put them in daycare.
At 6 weeks. 6 weeks, at 6 weeks.
From daycare, you put them in school. When the children come home, you're tired, they're tired. You don't want to deal with the kids. You put them in front of the TV. So we don't even know our culture anymore, because we've been so brainwashed for so many generations that we have lost the information.
Wow.
But the good thing about it is it's still attainable. You just have to do your research. You just have to be willing to search out what it
Mm,
is that has been lost. And they did a good number of destroying a lot of the information
that's true.
that we're referring to, right? You look in like the 1600s and 1700s when Europe colonized the world. First, they kicked out the Moors from Europe,
Okay.
and then came the Renaissance period,
Mm.
right? The age of enlightenment for Europe was after they kicked out the Moors, right? What they did though is they burnt up a lot of the ancient texts. They had a lot of fires that occurred that burned and destroyed libraries that we built in Europe and in Africa. But they were doing away with this information so that it would be hard to find. They
Mm.
also confiscated a lot of information and took it to the Vatican, so that again it's hard to find this information, or they, at least for a long time, it had been hard to find this information. But again, we're in the age of
Mhm.
the Aquarius, where all of this information can very well be found.
Absolutely. In fact, I remember reading one of your college books when I came to visit you while you were in college, and you had this book called Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James that was profound, talking about how the Greeks stole information and knowledge from the Egyptians. And then after they stole the knowledge, first of all, they some of them sat under the tutelage of the Egyptians, others of them just stole the knowledge and then burned down the libraries. Well, by the way, I looked up George G.M. James once I read that book that you had and realized that he died mysteriously after he wrote this book.
Yes. A lot of people who gave information, and even still today,
Mhm.
a lot of them were unalived, or
Mm.
or mysteriously passed away, or
Mm.
committed suicide,
Mm.
allegedly.
Yeah.
But this has been the way that they have tried to prevent this information from coming out.
Mm.
Because if he wrote that book, what would have been the next book that he wrote,
Mm.
right? And so you have to nip it in the bud, right? You have to stop it before it gets out too much, because if the more the people know, then again, the harder it is to control them.
Mm.
And this has
Yes.
been all about control. But this is the reason why the collapse is occurring,
Okay.
because the time is up, right? They know it, and now it's coming to the reality of the everyday man and woman, right?
Mm.
All of these events that are occurring right now, right? Whether it be like the pandemic, where the world shut down,
Mhm.
or it be like these ice storms that are occurring today, right? They're finding ways to collapse the system, or at least to really to collapse the system, because it has to happen. This is the reason why, as you mentioned, many arrests are being are occurring today. Many people are stepping down. A
Yeah.
lot of the political leaders, a lot of financial elites, a lot of celebrities are stepping down or retiring because they are implicated, not just in the Epstein files. Many are implicated in the Epstein files, but Epstein was not the only one.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Yeah, I mean there were many Epsteins,
Okay.
right? So
Mm. Mm.
so if, like, even Donald Trump, one of his main lawyers early on was a guy named Roy Cohen.
Okay.
He did a lot of the same things that Epstein does
Mm.
in terms
Okay.
of getting information for blackmail purposes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Getting compromising information. But again, the even in order to get to a certain threshold, you have to be compromised. So you talk about the casting couch in the entertainment industry.
Mhm.
Everybody had to go through the casting couch.
That's
And
true.
when you
Yes.
consider before, like today, you have different platforms where you can YouTube, you can create your own platform and your own audience. Before, there were no other avenues. You had to go to Hollywood, and so then it was much easier to control the narrative.
I see. You had mentioned to me the other day, speaking of, you mentioned the pandemic. You had told me before that shutting down the world during that time was preparation for now. Can you explain that?
Well,
Like
what
it
I
was.
believe is, yeah. Um, how do you collapse? The system is collapsing. It's inevitable,
Okay.
right? So then, how can you get the people to accept that their reality is going to
Mm,
shift drastically?
okay.
Well, the best way to do that is to give a precursor, right? Which would have been the pandemic. Shut down the world for a time period. Let people get used to staying at home. Let people get used to not working, because
Mm,
a few years down the road, their jobs won't even be there for them to go to. All right. So now you look at this year, last year, thousands of retail stores closed for good. Restaurant franchises closed for good. Corporations, financial corporations, banks shut
mhm.
down.
Schools
Now,
were consolidated.
right, right. But it was a matter of getting the people prepared for what is to come.
Which is what's to come.
The collapse of the system
Okay.
first, right? The system has to collapse in order to bring the new era, right? One of the things that you mentioned before is five dimension, right? We're living in the third dimension, but it was said that we were at a higher level in the times of Adam, for example. Even in ancient African uh, beliefs, they would say that there was a time where you could reach up and touch heaven.
Mm,
Well, when these beings came to this planet, they lowered the vibration of the planet
okay.
and dropped us into this third dimension realm. So now it is important for us, as you always say on your show, to raise the vibrations of the planet.
Yes.
All right. Truth is the highest vibration, right? When you hear truth, it resonates
Mm,
with your spirit, with your soul, because we are vibrations, right? The world is all vibration, sound and light and frequency is all vibrations. Lies and chaos is not consistent. It's not a consistent level of vibration. It's out of tune,
mm,
right? So people today have been out of tune. The world is inharmonious, and we are having to bring back the harmony of the world, of this planet.
yes.
All right. They say this is the newest, most recent planet. Um,
Mm,
Even they talk about other planets. They said there was no life form on these planets. Well, we're living in the physical realm, but you can imagine even before we were born, we were spirit. Spirit is not physical.
mm,
So why would there be people on these other planets if these are older planets and they have higher levels of vibrations? So now what has been said though, you look, and because we're in the 3D realm right now, we're seeing things in the physical, and we're conducting life in the physical. But when we raise the vibrations to a certain point, we will go beyond the physical,
Wow.
right? And the planet will be raised into the heavens, past the third dimension, past the fourth dimension, and into the fifth dimension.
Wow. Do you espouse the idea that some people can be actually living in a fifth dimension or higher dimensions while others live in lower realms or lower dimensions?
Absolutely, certainly,
Okay.
certainly. Even you talk about terrestrials, extraterrestrials, and interterrestrials, right? We are terrestrial, meaning that we live on the plane, on the planet, right? But there are interterrestrials that live inside the planet, and there are extraterrestrials that live outside or above the planet. They say that the beings that conquered this planet are four dimension, right? 4D, you can't see them unless they come to your level,
I see.
right? I heard a concept that ants, for example, live on the second dimension, right? And in 2D or paper, right? This is 2D.
Okay.
So the ant cannot see you unless you come down to their level, right? So now there are beings, though, that can go in and out of different dimensions. We, as third dimension beings, eventually, it has at least been said that eventually we will be able to go into the other dimensions, right? So even you talk about many of the monks, or many of the monks in Asia, or many of the spiritualists in Africa, some of them have the capabilities of going into other dimensions, right? But here in America, it is being written off as fantasy,
Yes.
fairy tale, right? But the interesting thing is, again, they put these things in our movies,
True.
but then they tell us it doesn't exist. But if it doesn't exist, then how did you get the information? How did you think of these things?
Like fairies and mermaids, that type of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. But when you go to Africa and you go to
Mhm.
other parts of the world, that's their reality.
It is. Do you remember when we were in Ghana, we were walking somewhere and we saw all these reporters and people gathered out in the square? And we had just missed a particular incident and the people were reporting on it. They were talking about it. I was so upset that we missed it. Can you speak briefly to what happened in Ghana?
Yes. And just to let you know, the article is still there. You can look it on Google. You can
Mm,
type in "man turns into bird" in Ghana. So
okay.
when we were in Ghana, you, me, and my brother, your son, your other son, were walking through the street, and as you said, there was a crowd of people. There were the news channels reporting, and we asked the people, "What's going on? What happened?" And they reported back to us, "Oh, three men turned into birds." And they were at an old man's house, and they turned into birds at night, flew away, and when they came back early in the morning, they landed on the wrong building. They landed because he lived right across the street from the police station, and they landed in the police station. Well, two of the men turned back into birds and flew away. The third man, when he was turning back into the bird, before he could transform, he was arrested.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him, why? First of all,
Yes.
why was
Yes.
he arrested?
Hmm.
And the response was, "Oh, it's illegal to turn into animals." I said, "Excuse me?" Not impossible.
It's illegal.
It's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But now then we have to ask the question, who makes the rules in Ghana?
Mm,
It would be the British.
right.
The British make the laws and the rules because they colonized Ghana, as well as Europe colonizing the rest of Africa. So Africa is under the rules and control of the European colonial powers. And so, again, it was said to be illegal. And said, so you're telling me it's possible? Oh, yeah, no, it's possible. People do it all the time.
That's what they told us. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're not allowed to. You can get arrested if you get caught.
Yeah. And they were saying, now that they're Christian and they have a different perspective on life, you're not allowed to turn into birds. You're not allowed to practice any of their traditional ways. It was amazing to see. And everybody, they were just talking about these people flying like that was an everyday occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They also talked about mermaids.
They did.
All right. They're being seen, even again, sirens and mermaids are in the books and in the movies in America, but then they'll tell you, but that doesn't exist. That's fantasy world. But
didn't you have somebody from Senegal, excuse me, that say that they talk about being from the mermaid bloodline? Some of the people, was that Senegal or Ghana?
In Ghana.
Ghana, okay.
There were. I was talking to a lady in Ghana about mermaids, and she told me that a pastor actually came out and discussed how he was led into an occult of pastors and people in a secret society, and he said that they did different rituals, right? And he was saying that one day he ran into a mermaid, and the woman, he didn't know that she was a mermaid because she was walking on Earth, right, in the country. And when he met her, he asked who she was, where she's from. And she said, well, I can tell you, but you have to, keep it amongst us. And she said, the man and the woman went to his house, and she instructed the man to lock the door, because if the people find you when I introduce you to my people, they'll think you're dead. Right. So he said that when he locked the door, they went into the water world. And that's when he found out that she was a mermaid. And he met all of her family.
That's right.
And he said that he was in this realm for 3 days. So yeah, the information is there.
It's there, and I don't think it's sacrilegious. I think it's just different from what people are used to. Because I remember talking to a woman when I was in Ghana, and she actually studied her traditional ways, and I call her my sister. She ended up marrying a king, but she was talking to me, and then she went into another realm and started talking to what she called the water gods. And after she entered that realm and talking to the water gods, what she would call the water gods, maybe it was her ancestors, she started talking to me about what was going on in my life. She talked to us about the medicine we needed, the herbs to help your dad when he was ill. And those herbs actually sustained his life for several years. It was just profound to enter into a realm that was different from what we're accustomed to.
Yes. And again, these things exist, but they have taken away this knowledge and information from the people here in this country and written it off as fallacy so that it would be considered make-believe. But if it's make-believe, then why would they make movies like Little Mermaid, where it literally says the same thing, right? About a little girl, a mermaid, coming onto Earth.
Yeah. Wow.
All right, but again, fallacy. That's the easiest way to discredit people, is to say it's conspiracy or just crazy. You know, that's crazy talk. When I was telling people here in America, when I came back from Ghana and was telling people, you know, people are turning into animals in Africa, they said you're crazy. There's no way that's possible. That's why I looked it up. I said, let me look to see if it's even online, because if the people were reporting about it, then it might be online. And I found that very story right on the internet. And that's when people said, you know what? It's still crazy, but maybe you have something, you know, there might be something to that.
Mm, mm, mm.
But when you look again, it's about control, right? So you look at Africa, you look at the politicians and the judges in Africa, they wear wigs, representations of the Europeans that colonized them, which shows who's really in control or who has been in control.
Wow.
And so then when you talk about why people are stepping down, it's because we have entered a new era.
Okay.
The things of old cannot continue. People know too much, right? The information travels faster than ever, or faster than
Yeah.
in our lifetimes, we'll say, right? Like in the beginning of this video, you said you showed people from all parts of this country tuning in, people from other countries
Yeah.
tuning in,
Mm-hmm.
and instantaneously information can be spread, right?
That's
The Epstein files instantaneously took over the world. So now everybody is looking at their own leaders, right? My friend and brother Musa from Senegal, I was talking to him a few days ago, and we were discussing the Epstein files, and he said that they're in his country in Senegal, somebody came out, same thing that Pam Bondi said, or something similar, said that if I tell everybody who's been involved in these nefarious activities, the country will explode.
wow. Wow.
Because essentially all of the leaders, or the vast majority of the leaders, have been implicated, and compromised themselves with children and with other nefarious activities. And so if, and not just if, but when the information comes out, then the people will respond, and not
Absolutely.
in the ways, exactly, not in the ways that the leaders, the elite, would prefer. So
Can,
this is
can we
why
go ahead?
people are stepping down. No, go ahead. This is why people are stepping down, because that's the easiest way, right? People are stepping down, and even people are dying, right? They're just saying, oh, this person died, or they're even saying some people are getting arrested, but they're using different forms of taking down the leaders of old.
Can I show you just a brief clip of how deep this has gone, if you don't
Mhm.
mind? Okay, it's just a brief clip, family. Bear with me. If you are enjoying this podcast with Dex Lattimore, historian and economist, he is the economist of the Soul Tribe, then please make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel. I'll put that link in the chat for you. If you'd like to support his work financially or send him a donation, you can send it to his Cash App at $ Dex Lattimore. That's $ DEXLATTIMORE. And yes, that name is a very popular, familiar name if you're wondering. Most of the Lattimores are musicians, and he is, in fact, a very, very well accomplished musician, as well as a historian and economist.